So, recently, the Ironheart trailer was just dropped on YouTube by Marvel, and the reception was not great. While there are, of course, a lot of very legit criticisms you can throw at a show like this, such as the fact that Riri Williams, who is the main character in this show, first appeared in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, and nobody really remembers her, inevitably, this particular trailer has a very notorious subset of film criticism on YouTube rearing its ugly head. I'm talking about none other than anti-woke film critics, which, oh boy, they are really at it with this one. Anti-woke film criticism has become a very noticeable trend on YouTube in the past 5 or 6 years, and has seemed to grow more and more in popularity, strangely enough, throughout the past several years. What an anti-woke film critic does is more or less detract from any real sort of criticism with a film by usually picking out characters of a certain race, sexual orientation, or something else that makes them somewhat of a minority. Instead of discussing things like pacing or storytelling or cinematography, the things you should discuss when critiquing a film, they'd rather complain about how Star Wars has so many female characters now, and just try and lament that Star Wars is now quote-unquote woke because of Disney. Yeah, cause clearly female characters make something bad, right? It's not like Star Wars already had a ton of female representation even before Disney bought it. For every Patrick H. Williams, you get a critical drinker, one of these awful, really shallow critics who just can't analyze a film beyond anything involving DIE. So today, I want to discuss this particular type of criticism, why it's bad, why a lot of these people are actually just straight up hypocritical with what they say, and ultimately what real film criticism should look like. To start, let's discuss the person who most likely is the poster child for anti-woke film criticism on YouTube, that being the Critical Drinker. The Critical Drinker is a channel that looks at modern film, television, and a few video games as well, and talks about what makes them quote-unquote woke while being consistently drunk, since that's his entire character type. He often takes aim specifically at things made under Disney, most notably Star Wars, Marvel, and often Disney live-action remakes, since there's obviously very easy shots to take there. However, rather than talking about specifically what makes certain projects made under Disney, specifically Star Wars and Marvel stuff, actually bad, such as the fact a lot of them are very rushed out and there's a big issue with oversaturation, and the fact that not a lot of time is actually put into these projects usually because Disney demands around 7 Marvel projects per year, he just takes a very superficial look at all of it and decides, oh, the introduction of quote-unquote wokeness must have made these projects unsuccessful and have rather poor reception. When no, that really isn't the case, and oftentimes he'll just contradict himself on this as well. To give a good example, one of the more recent videos he put out was called Revenge of the Sith Humiliates Disney Star Wars. In this video, he discusses the recent re-release of Revenge of the Sith into theaters for the 20th anniversary and talks about how it was the last Star Wars movie that actually felt like Star Wars. In this video, however, he claims that Revenge of the Sith and the rest of the prequels were actually seen as good upon the release because of the pretty visuals, and later on, in his words, they became hated because of video essays tearing them apart.
At first everyone loved it because they were hyped by the Star Wars legacy and the pretty visuals, but then came the YouTube video essay era where it became fashionable to make hour-long videos shitting all over the prequels, and now that we're trapped in the festering swamp of the Disney era, the rose-tinted glasses are coming out and people are starting to look back more favourably on the prequel trilogy.
And supposedly, now that Disney is in charge of Star Wars and spreading the quote-unquote message, now people see Revenge of the Sith as good again, and the prequels overall, when in actuality, this was never the case. This is just misinformation. The prequels were completely lambasted upon release, with many old fans of the original trilogy getting extremely heated and often just unnecessarily vile about their opinions on them, with some even writing a song on how Jar Jar Binks should die, which is just really intense and kinda sad.
Jar Jar Binks, Jar Jar Binks, Jar Jar Binks.
Drinker is just blatantly incorrect about this, but he tries to claim that the prequels were seen as good at some point in time around their release just to fit his narrative for his reasoning on why the Disney Star Wars stuff doesn't seem to resonate with people. Well, fun fact, Drinker, the prequels didn't resonate with a lot of fans of the original trilogy, so there. And a lot of them just ended up being super racist about Ahmed Best, the actor that played Jar Jar Binks. And also caused Jake Lloyd, a literal child, to have to go into a mental health facility just because he could not handle the amount of backlash he received for playing young Anakin. Things were really not good at all in the Star Wars fandom around this time, even though Drinker might try to convince you that it was. His takes on media are so bottlenecked in order to meet his own agenda of rage baiting people into clicking on his videos because he thinks something is woke and wants to convince other people that it is too. Ironic, given the fact all the media he criticizes he tries to say is spreading the message, quote unquote. However, something is very interesting about this. Whatever a piece of media that he thinks is spreading, quote unquote, the message, is actually received well, he will somewhat backpedal and say, oh, this is alright, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be, while still throwing up random things about how it shouldn't have been woke anyway. I think a really good example of this is his take on the film Prey, which was the first Predator film made after Disney bought Fox and got the rights to that franchise. When Disney initially dropped the first trailer for Prey, which was meant to be a Hulu exclusive, of course Drinker hopped right on top of this, immediately trying to call it woke propaganda and complaining about how a young Native American girl could possibly take on the Predator, when even Arnold Schwarzenegger struggled to do so back in the 1980s. He also magically assesses that clearly from this one single trailer, this must be feminist propaganda, and it also isn't accurate to old hunter-gatherer society because they would have beaten the crap out of somebody like this, is apparently his reasoning.
So of course our protagonist turns out to be a strong female character who just wants to become a hunter against the wishes and traditions of her tribe. Why? So the rest of the plot can happen. Also, I'd like to point out that no hunter-gatherer society of that time period would have tolerated this kind of bullshit from one of their own. Those ideas would have been literally beaten out of her before she could say, smash the patriarchy.
The last point he tries to make there, when you really think about it, doesn't actually hold that much water, because there have been plenty of movies set in history that aren't technically historically accurate that are still received very well, such as Amadeus being a great example. Amadeus is a classic film from 1984 about the alleged rivalry between the famous composer Mozart and another composer around the same time by the name of Salieri. Historically, it's never really been confirmed whether Mozart and Salieri were actually rivals or not, and some even claim that they might have been friends. All that is really known about them throughout this period of history is that they were in constant contact during their years in the Vienna music scene. So really, this film doesn't actually have any real historical fact to it, but that doesn't stop it from being a great movie. It won 8 Oscars when it came out, and it's generally considered one of the greatest films of all time, and rightfully so. So really, Drinker trying to claim this film isn't historically accurate and that automatically will make it bad just from the trailer alone does seem pretty foolish. But what makes this even more foolish is that when Prey actually came out, it was actually received very well, even by some viewers of the critical Drinker. And after realizing this, he ended up making a half-hearted video about how he thinks Prey was at least okay, which is basically just code for I shouldn't have based this movie just on its trailer. But somehow, even in this review where he says this film was surprisingly good, he still tries to shame it for quote-unquote not being historically accurate and also being overly feminist.
She thinks and acts more like a 21st century college student than an 18th century Native American woman, determined to defy gender norms, compete with the boys, stand up to anyone who disrespects her, and smash the patriarchy. And I don't know, man, I find it kinda hard to believe that anyone living back then would even have those kinds of aspirations, never mind being allowed to indulge them.
He tries to claim that it appears that Naru, the main Native American woman in this film, is always trying to stand up to her male-based tribe and the patriarchy because it's woke propaganda, which no, that's really not what it is. And it's also ironic that he tries to use these exact points against Prey when, just a year earlier, he praised Disney's original animated Mulan for the exact same things.
See, the original actually took a pretty balanced and realistic view of the subject of women serving in the military. Animated Mulan wasn't particularly big or strong or good at fighting, because that wouldn't be realistic given her background. She was actually kind of clumsy and unsure of herself, and she had to work extra hard just to keep up with her male counterparts. But the difference here is that Prey is a prequel, you see. A prequel about a young Native American girl who has to defy her tribal traditions in order to take on a nearly invincible hunter from another worlds. Because, you know, if elite special forces operatives, hard-boiled detectives, and entire squads of specially trained government agents can't stop these things, then a 100-pound teenage girl is definitely gonna make the difference.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Drinker literally wants to have his cake and eat it too. He will call a movie like Prey quote-unquote woke, but not a movie like 1988 Mulan, which does the exact same kind of thing with its main female character. Both Mulan and Naru are not Mary Sue characters, and they both lose a lot actually. And they both really have to work and train to beat the big bad guy that they're facing. Yet while Drinker will criticize Prey for this, he'll praise Mulan for the exact same thing. Like, come on, dude, make it make sense. Most of his full review for Prey just comes off as him being really bitter that he can't fully rip into this movie at all. And a lot of that is because, in his view, it's a lot easier to push an ideology of wokeism ruining Hollywood and making movies unsuccessful when the film in question is actually unsuccessful, which Prey wasn't. At the end of the day, Critical Drinker is a pretty blatant hypocrite and also just a grifter trying to push his own beliefs onto others in the guise of a very negative movie review. And unfortunately, it does look like this has worked in a lot of ways, since there are a lot of people he's convinced that Hollywood is being ruined because it's too quote-unquote woke, when in reality, there's a lot of other more nuanced issues with Hollywood that you could say is ruining it. It doesn't just boil down to a movie being woke or whatever, that's just dumb. But inevitably, Drinker is not the only film critic to constantly try and push this agenda. Enter Nerdrotic, a channel that pretty much does the same thing as Drinker, but like 10 times more aggressive and also uses AI thumbnails. Great. Nerdrotic's thumbnails in particular are very blatantly just rage bait, since he'll often take a Star Wars or Marvel female character and use AI to either make them look ugly or overly muscular or something akin to that in his thumbnail in order to draw in clicks. He also uses the same red and yellow font on literally every single thumbnail, and it's really an eyesore to look at. In a lot of ways, I would actually argue that Nerdrotic is more superficial and also just straight up more hateful than Critical Drinker. Critical Drinker obviously is very superficial with the kinds of reviews he puts out, as I just described, but with Nerdrotic, it really just seems to lean directly into rage bait more than anything else. There's a video he did where he tries to claim that Marvel is failing post-Endgame because they all got woke, quote-unquote. He lists a bunch of examples of failed Marvel projects post-2020, but interestingly enough, one he brings up is both Loki Season 1 and Season 2.
And of the 9 live-action D+ series, only 1 has gotten a second season, and it was awful. We're not going to allow that cope here.
Which is kind of funny, because if you look at that, those are actually 2 of the most highly acclaimed Marvel projects from the last 5 years. And it also just so happens to have a pretty diverse cast. Huh, funny how that is, isn't it? And what do you know, Nerdrotic has actually straight up admitted to using rage bait for money and views before. Around the time the second Spider-Verse film was coming out, he took this opportunity to try and post Miles Morales is Miles Morales every chance he got, since he knew this would upset Spider-Man fans.
I've made $1,000 on Twitter. $1,000. And I know there's people out there stealing content like Ian Miles Chong, making a lot more, but I'm making $1,000 off of Miles Morales tweets. Shit I would do for free. That, for one, is America. That is capitalism. And I it's fucking hilarious.
Dude, come on, is this really something you want to be bragging about? He'll often try to stir the pot by just saying straight up racist things even.
What there wasn't a lot of was men. Not sure what happened to all the dudes in Wakanda. Maybe they went off to get a pack of Salems and never came back. Oh shit, I don't know if I'll keep that one in.
I don't want to spend too much time discussing Nerdrotic much further, since I think it's very clear what he gets his kicks from, and that's inciting controversy in order to get clicks and money, which I don't think is worth my time, nor worth your time either. So I'm just gonna cap this off saying it's pretty blatant what he is, and he's probably the stereotypical example of this kind of grifter YouTuber. The last really big, and also really bad one that I want to bring up specifically is ND Mayon. ND Mayon is most notable for trying to constantly make videos that expose the woke agenda of various video games. Which, by the way, if you'd like to see a video about me talking about anti-woke game criticism as well, let me know down below, because there's a lot to say there too. Outside of games though, ND Mayon has also discussed film a little bit on his channel, including one video that we're gonna look at today called Why Forced Woke Diversity is Dying. Oh boy. This video was released around the same time that TMNT Mutant Mayhem came out. This film happened to feature a version of the character April O'Neil, who is African American in this version and also slightly plus sized, although I don't think it's that noticeable. But you know who did notice it? You guessed it, ND Mayon, and he made a whole video on it, so let's take a look.
While April being black is one thing, it is exhaustingly on brand that she's also unfit as well. It's not to say that heavier people shouldn't be represented in media, but I do think it's also not a good idea to legitimize an unhealthy lifestyle and then make that as a role model for people.
Okay, so right off the bat, he completely misconstrues what April's role is in this film and arguably TMNT as a whole. April is not meant to be a role model at all when she's just a character that exists. Nowhere in Mutant Mayhem does it ever come across that April is supposedly being pushed as a role model for unhealthiness. I don't know where this guy got that from. In addition to this, I personally don't think she really appears that overweight at all, and she's also a teenager. So what this guy is doing is essentially fat shaming a minor. Alright then.
April aspire to.
Again, I don't think even that's true either. Original April wasn't really being pushed as a role model for healthiness either, much like how the new version of April isn't being pushed as a role model for unhealthiness. Her being unfit or fit doesn't really have anything to do with the integral part of her character and what she stands for. And if he really wants to try and make the argument that original April was the role model for healthiness or something, then maybe he should take a look at what the turtles and her are always eating together. She literally hangs out with 4 dudes who always eat pizza.
I'd like to invite you all in, but, I really don't have anything to offer you guys except for, frozen pizza.
Let's go for it!
You guys eat pizza?
Doesn't everybody?
And that's not really shamed at all there, so what's your point, man?
Physical fitness is important. You should push yourself to be the best version that you can be, and being overweight is not good for you. And if you think I'm being fat phobic, that says more about you than it does about me.
No, I think it's very blatant you are being fat phobic because you picked out a particular body type on a character when, honestly, that doesn't really matter for them.
They could have easily made April a fit and daring black woman and people would have been much more receptive to it.
It's funny he tries to claim that if they made her a more fit and daring black woman, people wouldn't be mad at it, when he shows the exact black version of April that people did get mad at from Rise of TMNT. I do remember when this show came out, a lot of people were actually really upset at the change to April's ethnicity. So this is just straight up wrong. Also, it's interesting that he keeps saying fit and daring in the same sentence as if a plus-size woman can't also be daring. Huh, interesting.
Not to mention that April at times helps the turtles fight, and she follows them into danger when it comes to chasing her news stories. This new version looks like she'd be out of breath opening a fridge, and it feels like a deliberate character assassination by the creators.
She's not even that overweight, dude. What are you talking about? Yet again, he seems to draw this comparison between being plus size and not being daring, which isn't true. If you watch the movie, April is just as daring in this one and just as down to help the turtles as any version of April. The fact she is now a black teenager who is slightly plus sized doesn't even really matter because it's still April. And it's also kind of weird to see an adult man harping on a teenage girl character. That just, I don't know, that's just kind of weird with how much he is fat shaming a literal minor.
I understand why these things are happening, and it's because creators want their female characters to be seen as unremarkable and attainable. But as someone who works out a lot, I think normalizing and worshipping the concept of being overweight is not a good thing for either your health or society.
No, April's character type existing in this film is not meant to encourage worshipping unhealthy lifestyles. I don't know where you pulled that from. This is really the problem with most of these kinds of reviewers. They just pull something out of thin air often, it feels like, that might not even really be there, which is very evident in this case. But don't worry, he didn't get mad at just the new incarnation of April O'Neil. He also took the opportunity to get mad at a new incarnation of another 80s cartoon character, that being Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, and oh boy, he sure had some stuff to say on that.
A really good fight.
Okay, first off, I think if you asked any random person on the street if they knew Snake Eyes was white, I think they'd answer no. And I think that's for two very big reasons. One, Snake Eyes always covers up and wears a mask. Nobody knows what he looks like, so most people probably don't even know he's white. And secondly, the way his character is, it doesn't really matter whether he's white or Asian, because the whole appeal of Snake Eyes is the entire mystery surrounding his identity. The only things that really matter with Snake Eyes at the end of the day are his rivalries, the fact he wears all black and never talks, and the fact he conceals his identity. The fact he's nameless and has no real sense of identity is actually a big part of the reason why people like him. He just has a cool design. Whether he's white or Asian really has nothing to do with that. And inevitably, Andy Mayan extrapolates this and tries to claim that because Snake Eyes was changed to Asian in one of the recent movies, that's why it flopped, when no, that cannot be further from the truth. It flopped because nobody cared. I remember when this film was coming out and there was like no buzz about it at all. Nobody was even talking about the race swap here, it's just this guy. The reason why the Snake Eyes film flopped was just because of a lack of interest, literally nothing else. Then, immediately after this, he tries to deny any allegations of racism that could be thrown at him for what he just said about two different characters by talking about how he loves Spawn.
Spawn had a stranglehold on a young me from the moment I saw him. He looked insanely badass, and his outfit was scary with those glowing green eyes and the flowing red cape and chains that shot out of his body like Spider-Man's webs. As a child all the way to even now, I still love Spawn and always went out of my way to consume any media that had him in it. Spawn was also a black superhero whose real name is Al Simmons. I'm Serbian and Armenian, so I'm like a white person mixed with the Kardashians basically. By modern creator views, I shouldn't be able to see myself or connect with Spawn because he and I are different skin colors from different backgrounds.
Okay, so two things. First of all, he doesn't really describe what specifically about Spawn's character he relates to. He pretty much just says Spawn looked cool and that's why I liked him. He doesn't go anything beyond the actual design of the character. But then he also goes ahead and says by modern creator reviews he shouldn't be able to see himself in Spawn because they are different skin color and come from different backgrounds. That in of itself is segregating. He literally just said you don't have to look like a character to relate to them, but then goes ahead and says, by all means, I shouldn't be able to relate to this character. He just defeated his own point. Also, I'm not really sure what this Spawn thing has to do with anything, given he was just talking about how he hates April and also hates Snake Eyes, apparently. It doesn't really feel like any of this was really that well thought out. And of course, he continues this nonsensical point by saying he likes characters like Violet from Tales of Berseria and Barret from Final Fantasy VII, so clearly he's not racist. And even tries to claim that the creators of TMNT Mutant Mayhem are racist for making April black, apparently.
People are more than the color of their skin, and we are all allowed to see ourselves and connect with things even if they don't look like us. I love characters like Violet from Tales of Berseria, even though I'm not a Japanese woman myself. I also love Barret from Final Fantasy VII because he's this big, lovable dad figure with a goddamn machine gun for an arm. But the creators of this new TMNT movie or shows like Velma or Netflix's Witcher are low-key racist because they only see skin color.
Okay, admittedly this is pretty low-hanging fruit, but when you show a picture of a character like Velvet like this, it shows why you like them. Which, again, is very superficial. It isn't really diving into her character about why you like her. And he could have decided to talk about maybe a specific character arc or something that happens in her story that he likes, but no, he decided to show this picture instead, which is pretty telling. And even with Barret, he literally just left it at, he's a dad who has a machine gun, and I like that. He didn't talk about anything about the depth to Barret's character, and how he's a man haunted by the death of his best friend and feels survivor's guilt because of that, and that's why he takes care of Marlene. And how he feels he has to embody toxic masculinity in order to be seen as strong or powerful by those around him, because he wants to be seen as a leader. There is so much more you could say about Barret than just, he's a dad and he has a machine gun. Makes you really wonder if he actually played Final Fantasy VII before, or even bothered to get to know Barret's character at all. And after this, he has the audacity to talk about Serbian people and how he feels they're represented in media.
How many shows that involve terrorists have bad guys that are Russian, Serbian, Croatian, or Albanian? As a Serbian man myself, where's my representation? The only Serbians I have to look up to are the bad guys of Uncharted 2, which are Serbians.
My guy, you were just talking about how you don't have to look like someone to feel represented. Yet now you're whining about not having your Serbian representation? What are you even trying to say here? So it's okay if there's a positive Serbian representation, but not okay if there's a positive plus-sized black representation? Make it make sense. Honestly, out of all the videos I had to watch to make this video, I think this is the most painful to sit through and definitely the worst one, because everything here is just so poorly thought out and none of it connects to anything. Which, at the end of the day, most of these anti-woke grifter channels come off like this anyway. Most of them try to take the tiniest thing and make a big deal out of it to make it seem like diversity is ruining Hollywood. Their motto is go woke, go broke, and to them that means if a film has a diverse cast, then it's gonna flop. Which just isn't true. I mean, look at two big films from this year even. Sinners and the Minecraft movie. Sinners features a diverse cast of black people, but also Asian representation as well, and it's already making huge waves and a huge R-rated success. The Minecraft movie also has a very diverse cast, which you could definitely say some things about that movie's particular quality and how much it leans into meme culture, but looks like it doesn't matter because the film has almost made $1 billion. At the end of the day, whether a film is diverse or not does not determine whether it's gonna be a flop or not. It's the film itself. In order to properly criticize a film, you have to look at the fundamentals of what makes a film a film. You have to look at storytelling, cinematography, acting, pacing, dialogue, all these things that are fundamental aspects of a film. You can't just take a superficial look at something and call it woke and call it a day. That's not real criticism. But since I discussed 3 anti-woke grifter film critics that you probably shouldn't watch, I'm gonna give you 3 film critics I think you should watch that really understand what it means to be a film critic and how you should criticize a film. First up, Patrick H. Williams. I really like this guy a lot. His videos usually tackle a specific film, generally a lesser known one, which I really like, or like a film trope, which I think is super cool. He actually takes the time to walk the viewer through different facets of filmmaking that you should do, such as, pacing, storytelling, all the things already discussed, and in my opinion, he's one of the best film critics on the platform. Another one I really like is Savage Books for oftentimes tackling media that doesn't always get covered as much. Savage Books specifically looks at movies as an example to help people improve their writing, which I think is really cool. The last one I think you should check out is Better with Bob, who also does cover a lot of Disney animation, which obviously most of my audience will be into. He's done a very good video on analyzing Disney's Hunchback, Tarzan, and Hercules as possibly autistic characters, which obviously a lot of you will probably like. He does a lot of good videos overall, not even just about Disney, but also things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Avatar, and plenty of live action works too, so definitely give him a shot. Overall, the growth of these anti-woke grifter channels is very concerning, and I think it's more important than ever as a result to boost up real film critic channels. Since A, they know how to actually analyze a film, and B, they're not just using their platform to spread hate. Huh, what do you know, it's almost like the anti-woke grifters have their own message, just like the one they always get mad about. But what do you think? Am I wrong? Are these channels actually good? Let me know down below. I hope you enjoyed today's video overall. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe and also give the video a like as well. I make lots of videos covering film overall and just things of that nature, so if you like good analysis, be sure to subscribe. You can also join my Discord to suggest topics for me to cover here on YouTube in the future. And you can also check out my letterbox, which is linked down below also, where I review movies and shows, oftentimes movies and shows I won't cover here on YouTube. All those are linked down in the description. But regardless, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new too. I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye!